Live exemplarily, love authentically, and lead relationally. Indeed, this is the Inspired Family Leader Program with Samuel A. Bakutana, your host, a certified executive coach, an award-winning leadership consultant, a global speaker and author, the CEO of Inspired Leaders International, and the Provincial Fathers Union President in the Church of Uganda. It's a pleasure to have you today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are watching us from around the world, or the time that you are watching us at right now. Today is an amazing day when we are going to be sharing nuggets of wisdom about a very critical topic. A topic that I have addressed before in a number of audiences with married people, and it has often left us thinking a lot more, having even more questions than the answers we were looking for. But I want to believe that today your life will not be the same again after watching this program. When was the last time you disagreed with your wife? When was the last time you disagreed with your husband? Today we are talking about the topic of when couples cannot agree. One time I was talking with some lady, and she asked me a question, and she said, "Samuel, my husband and I cannot agree. So what next?" That morning I went back and reflected upon that question, and I realized that that is a question that many married people are asking. And today I want to be sharing a number of things that I believe are going to help us to be better, to be stronger in our marriages. This is the Inspired Family Leader Program, where we equip specifically the men and challenge them, but also inspire them to be able to expand the boundaries of their capacity to lead their own families, so that by ripple effect we can have national transformation. So whereas I'm going to be focusing, whereas this program focuses on equipping the man, this topic today is focusing on both the man and the woman, the husband and the wife. So ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. We are going to have an amazing time this wonderful time. When couples cannot agree. Now, where do we start from? I want us to start from the point that by design, marriage is a perfect incubator for disagreement. Let me say that again, that by design, marriage is a perfect incubator for disagreement. In conflict resolution, we often say that wherever there are two or more people, there has to be conflict. As long as there are two people, there has to be conflict. In fact, don't you really know that sometimes, even when there is only one person, conflict happens? I remember a few years ago when I was in the city of Kampala, in Uganda, in East Africa, and there is a place called Mulago, where we have the National Referral Hospital. At that roundabout, there used to be some signposts. So one time I was passing by, and then I saw a man who was looking at the signposts and pointing a finger at them, and he looked like he was quarreling with them. He was just doing something like this, as if he was looking for a certain signpost he had left there maybe some time ago, and he was now not finding it there. Or he had an issue with the color of one of the signposts. I don't know. But he looked like he was quarreling with the signposts. Now, that is an internal conflict with himself. You know, where you get into a meeting between me, myself, and I, and we can't agree. And we conflict. And you find somebody is a walking civil war. So if there can be a conflict between me, myself, and I, how about when there is another person called my wife? How about when you, as a lady, you have another person called your husband? When your husband is not there, you can as well have internal conflict. You can have mental stress. You can have emotional strain. You can have internal conflict. So how about when you now get another person who also has an internal civil war and both of you meet? By design, by default, marriage is a perfect incubator for conflict and disagreement. Now, I want to show you some 5 scenarios why I say that. To begin with, you have 2 people in it. And where you have 2 people, there is a possibility of having opposers and proposers, like we used to have in debates. Where you have 2 people, there is a likelihood of having the ruling party and the opposition. Where you have 2 people, there is a possibility of having pros and cons, like we say, advantages and disadvantages. Where you have 2 people, there is a possibility of having side A and side B, those who are for and those who are against. So that is one scenario, that marriage is a perfect setup for disagreement because you have 2 people in it. At least if you had one person, somehow you can decide to move on with a situation. But where you have 2 people, 2 is a symbol of pro and opposition, proposition and opposition, for or against, advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons, side A and side B, opposers and proposers. So just because there are 2 people, then you have to expect disagreement. But scenario number 2 is that you don't only have 2 people. You have 2 adults. Adults. Maybe if you have 2 children, somewhere, somehow, they can easily let things pass. But where you have 2 people who are not just people, but adult people, then you can be sure that they often feel they are right, because that's a characteristic of adults. They always feel they are right. The man feels he is right. The woman feels she is right. 2 adults who often feel that their position is correct. So the man will say, I am correct. The woman says, I am correct. My position is the right position. Because you are dealing with adults here. They have strong opinions. So each one of them believes, I am right. My position is just different. Your opinion is just different. Maybe both of us are right, even when truly one of you is wrong. But because you are not dealing with only 2 people, but you are dealing with 2 people who are adults, then you are bound to face this challenge. Scenario number 3 is that you don't have 2 people who are adults, but you have 2 growing adults. So they are adults who are growing. You know, as we keep growing, we keep changing. So the person you thought you knew, one evening he surprises you. The woman you thought you had now learned and understood, one morning she surprises you. She shocks you with something. Why? Because she has been changing. She is growing. Why? Because this man is not static. He is not stationary. He is not staying in one place. He is growing mentally, the way he thinks. She is growing spiritually, the way she interacts with her Creator. He is growing socially, the people that he has been interacting with. But also she is growing financially, the way she thinks about issues of money. He, on the other side, has been growing intellectually, the way he reasons. So there is growth happening. The man is growing, the woman is growing. So you thought you knew him, you thought you knew her, and boom, he surprises you. She surprises you. So scenario 1, you have 2 people. Scenario 2, you have 2 people who are adults. Scenario 3, you have 2 people who are adults and they are on the journey of continuous growth. So when you think you have known him, he shocks you. Scenario number 4 is that you do not only have 2 people who are adults and still growing, but there are two people who have two sets of past experiences. I don't know how old you were when you got married to your husband or when you got married to your wife. When you married your wife. Maybe you were 24 and he was maybe 27. Maybe the man was 30 and the woman was 28. Maybe the man was 28 and the woman was 28 and a half or 29. Maybe the man was 40 and the woman was 31. Now, I would like you to think about that you spent about 2 decades of your life having your own experiences, and he also spent maybe 3 decades of his life having his own experiences. You went through different experiences, and now behold, you meet when you are 28, when you are 22, when you are 31, when you are 40. And you have these 2 sets of past experiences that you have to bring together and harmonize. Without a doubt, you are bound to face some challenges and disagreements. Let me give you some examples. You find that where the man grew up from, they watched no TV at all. But where the woman grew up from, they officially watched TV every evening for at least 1 hour. Potential for clashing. You find that when it comes to the man, he grew up in an urban area. But the woman was born and raised up and studied in the village. Potential for conflict. You find that the man never saw his father hold the hand of his mother and, walk together in love. But on the other side, in the family of the woman where she comes from, she witnessed her dad not only holding the hand of the mom, but also lifting her up and giving her a swirl around the whole room. Potential for disagreement. You find that the man grew up knowing that men don't cry whatsoever. But the woman had moments when she saw her dad at her most vulnerable moment. So now the 2 people come together. They have 2 different sets of past experiences and they have to harmonize them. That is a perfect setup for disagreement. But also scenario number 5, you don't only have 2 people. Number 2, you don't have 2 people who are adults. You don't only have, number 3, 2 people who are adults and they are still growing. Number 4, you don't only have 2 people who are adults and who are still growing and have 2 sets of past experiences. But scenario number 5, you have 2 potentially divergent views and futures that have to be harmonized. If you are watching me and you're married, tell me, I wish we could talk together. Haven't you, maybe in the last couple of hours or weeks or months or years, haven't you had a disagreement with your husband or with your wife based on the future that you have, based on the things that you envision, based on the things you want to do in the future? That's what I mean. You find the man wants to live his life on the aeroplane, traveling from country to country. But the woman wants to live her life on the farm, on the farmhouse, looking after, having a good time with the flora and fauna. Potential for disagreement based on 2 potentially divergent futures that have to be harmonized. You find that the man wants 3 children and the woman wants 7, or vice versa. You find that the man wants to silently flourish away from the public eye, but the woman wants to be a celebrity at the forefront of national politics. See how they disagree and conflict based on their different futures that they envisage or they desire to have. You find that the man wants to simply be a local champion, but the woman has a dream of being a global phenomenon. Potential for conflict. Am I describing somebody who is watching me right now? You find that the man wants to climb the professional ladder, in the banking sector. But the woman wants to pull down the sky in the sector of fashion and design. So you have somebody who wants to do great things in banking. You have another one who wants to do amazing things in fashion and design. And if they are not careful, that becomes the perfect incubator for their source of disagreement based on the potentially divergent futures that they have to harmonize. Or even you find that the man hopes for an adventurous lover in bed. Hello. But the woman plans to be that humble lamb. I will not say more details about this. So the whole point is marriage is a perfect incubator for disagreement. I've just given those 5 scenarios. Scenario number 1, you have 2 people in the marriage. So where you have 2 people, you are bound to so easily find yourself having opposers and proposers. Scenario number 2, you have 2 people who are adults. And because they are adults, each one of them believes they are right. He is right. She also says, my opinion is right. This one says, my view is correct. We just have different views, even when one of them is actually wrong. Scenario number 3, they are not only 2 adults, but they are still growing. So when you think you have understood this spouse, he shocks you, she shocks you. Scenario number 4, they are not only 2 adults who are still growing, but they are 2 people who are coming into this marriage covenant, this marriage partnership with 2 totally different past sets of past experiences. And finally, number 5, they don't only have 2 sets of different experiences from the past, they also have potentially divergent futures that they have to harmonize. Do you realize how marriage is a perfect, place for disagreement? Now, having said that, there is an ultimate marriage manual that can come in to be an awesome help. Here is the truth. Because God knew that we would have this kind of scenario, He gave us the ultimate marriage manual. And I want to propose with a strong conviction that there is no better manual for marriage than the Word of God, the Bible itself. I have personally found it to be very, very helpful. It helps us to deal with this tough reality that I have just shared. It is an explanation, it gives an explanation for marriage and its origins. It gives a clarification of the kingdom man and also a description of the kingdom woman. And when the kingdom man meets a kingdom woman and they are willing to walk a royal journey, they will have a palatial kind of relationship. This ultimate marriage manual gives a roadmap for how you can resolve conflicts. Not just manage them, not just resolve them, but also transform them into powerful experiences that you want to keep thinking about and bringing back into your conversations to strengthen your bond as husband and wife. This manual also gives you a plan for how you can handle all these kinds of disagreements. But because of the fallen nature, we instead prefer to use our own wisdom. We prefer to use our own human methodologies, to solve the marital problems. We prefer to use our own professional approaches from consultants and therapists and coaches, and which can be helpful, but if they are not rooted in this ultimate marriage manual, then they are bound to be a shocking failure. We prefer to use our own experiential calculations. But we need to swallow this pill as men and women, as husbands and wives, that we will have to expect disagreements in our marriages, and when you expect them, you won't be disappointed when they finally come up. Do you know that many times you were not disappointed by your husband, but by your expectation of your husband? Let me put it this way, that what disappoints you about your wife is not your wife, but your own expectations that you had from or about your wife. If your expectations were trimmed or your expectations were put in good, proper perspective, you wouldn't have been that disappointed. In fact, effective marriage is partly about effective expectations management. So you have studied financial management, you have studied human resource management, you have studied risk management, you have studied relationship management, you have studied clients management, and so on and so forth. Debt management. I think it would be good time for you to start also to study expectations management and transfer that learning into your marriage. It would be so helpful. Now, here is the question. Why do we at times fail to agree as husband and wife? I want to share a few reasons here, then we take a short break, and then we come back with the real deal of how we can deal with it when we cannot agree. So some of the reasons why we often fail to agree as husband and wife is because simply we think differently. That's a very valid reason why we fail to agree. We think differently. But secondly, many times it is a result of pride, either pride by the husband or pride by the wife or both. Pride. The other reason why many times we fail to agree in marriage is a result of prejudices. You find that we have our own biases. You were told that people from this tribe or that tribe are this and that. People from this tribe are slow. People from this tribe are arrogant. People from this tribe, are weak. They are violent, etc. So because you came into this marriage with that prejudice, with that bias, you are bound to keep looking at your spouse through the lenses of your preconceived biases. And as a result, even when all is well, you start to read what is not there. And that causes disagreement. Also, sometimes one reason why we disagree is because of selfish decisions. Selfish decisions. A man says, I am the Alpha and Omega here. So for you, what I have told you is what I have told you. That's what we are going with. When actually he has a selfish ambition that is nothing. Of course, that will cause a disagreement. Or the woman also comes up, the wife comes up with a selfish decision without thinking about her husband and just makes a decision. One of them made a decision recently which caused a divorce. A lady came and because for her, she wanted the husband to shift, to shift from their house to go into a different house, that the house was small, so she wasn't patient enough to wait for the husband to make enough money and move them to a big house. This young woman came and, my friend, she came with the car and packed things and saying, no, we are going, I have found a different house. Oh my. The man couldn't put up with it. Before you know it, they were fighting. To cut the long story short, they are no longer together. Why do we disagree? Sometimes we disagree because of self-important conduct, self-righteousness. What is it that you advise an experienced person like me? You find somebody is asking that kind of a question. I had a man who was talking with his fellow men at a joint somewhere, and he said, I can't go home, before midnight. Because if I go home, what will I be doing? Speaking with that foolish woman? My wife is foolish. My wife, we don't have conversations. And I was saying, how did you come to marry that kind of a wife? Maybe there is something about you that you are not coming to terms with. That self-righteous kind of conduct. Self-important, feeling the sense of self-importance. Some other times we disagree because we are simply ignorant about the value of relationships. Otherwise, if we understood the value of relationships, who knows, maybe we would simply value the relationship more than wanting to be right in this disagreement. And before we take a break, let me give you one more reason why we often end up disagreeing. We disagree because of fighting for the same opportunities and sometimes being jealousy and having the selfish ambitions. We are going to take a break. We are still talking about when couples can't agree. And after this short break, then we will think about the question of if people can't agree, what next? We will think about what we need to do whenever disagreements are so stiff and strong in our marital relationship. A certified executive coach, an award-winning leadership consultant, a global speaker, and an author, the CEO of Inspired Leaders International, where we empower leaders to be the best versions of themselves so that they can transform individual lives, institutions, and nations. I am the Provincial Fathers Union President. It's a pleasure to have you this morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're watching us from around the world. I'm also glad to know that a number of you are watching the graduates of the 31st intake of the Certificate in Public Speaking and Presentation Mastery are watching. I send you my love and greetings. I've seen some of your messages. Caleb, Immaculate, Samuel, to mention but a few. Thank you very much for paying attention and being part of this program. So today, once again, we are talking about what to do when couples cannot agree. We have already looked at how marriage is a perfect incubator for disagreement. We've also looked at the number of reasons why we fail to agree. And now, at this moment, I want to let you know that agreement is very important. When you agree with your husband, it makes perfect sense. When you agree with your wife, it makes perfect sense. It's important because it protects the spark of love in your marriage. So it doesn't mean that you won't disagree, but it means that once you disagree, you find a way how to once again come into agreement. And when that happens, it keeps on lighting the spark of love in your marriage. And secondly, it quickens family progress. How can two work together if they cannot agree? So how can a husband and a wife create development for their family if they are always in division, disagreement, disunity, disillusionment, depression, this, disease, this, and every this you can think about? Disunity, disillusionment, depression, and so on and so forth. When there is that sense of agreement, then you're able to make quicker progress together as a family. Also, it is important that you always learn how to agree even amidst disagreement, because when that happens, it creates a nurturing environment for your children, for your young boys and girls. Let me tell you, there is nothing that kills the destiny, the future of the children that you have in your house like always having a division kind of environment, a divisive environment in your home. But when there is a sense of agreement, then you can be sure that environment is a nurturing environment. The children grow up when they are happy. They learn how to solve conflicts. They learn how to agree. They learn how to even agree to disagree. It is a nurturing environment. So it is within your interest, the interest of your children, and the interest of all hundreds of lives that depend on your success, for you to learn to agree with your husband, for you to learn how to agree with your spouse, with your wife. Having said that, what next? I think whenever you can't agree, it's important that you check the lenses through which you are looking at the disagreement. Check the lenses. You know, when you put on goggles that are maybe tinted blue, everything you see looks blue. When you put on specs that are pink in color, the trees will look pink, the walls will look pinkish, the chairs will be pink, the people will be pink because of the lenses through which you are looking at them. So whenever you disagree, and let me say, whenever you actually can't agree, check the lenses through which you are looking at this disagreement. Check the lenses through which you are looking at your wife or your husband. And I would like to suggest a number of lenses that we often look through, which can help us to therefore put our disagreements in perspective. Lens number one is the waiting lens. Whenever you can't agree, sometimes you just need to sleep over it and wait for time to pass. Yes, sometimes you just need to wait. The waiting lens. Calm down first and then return to it at a later time. I have heard people say that you should not make a decision when you are angry, and you also should not make a promise when you are excited. The long and short of that expression, where they say that you should not make a decision when you're angry, or you should not make a promise when you're excited, the long and short of it is about managing one's emotions. Many times when you disagree with your wife or with your husband, you invest in, you inject in a huge dose of feelings and emotions. And at that moment, you are most likely to make a wrong decision. So, you may want to look at your disagreement through the waiting lens. And as you wait, think about the timing. Did I bring this out at the right time or not? In fact, you can even agree to pray over it for God's guidance and give it just a few days, a few hours, before you return to it. That is solution number one. Waiting a moment before you continue to deal with this disagreement. Number two is what I want to call the lenses of the benefit of doubt. The benefit of doubt. What this is about is that you need to remind yourself that you may be wrong, because you may be wrong. Give it a benefit of doubt. You may find you are on the wrong side of this conversation. So a benefit of doubt helps you to look at it differently. Because, wait, you don't know everything. I don't know everything. We don't know nobody knows everything. So you can be sure there are moments when you are wrong. There are moments when I am wrong in my conversation with my wife. So once in a while, I need to bring in the lenses of the benefit of doubt when we have a disagreement. Because I don't have all the information. You don't have all the information. In fact, ask yourself, must it always be your idea to be taken? Must it always be your opinion to be agreed with? Must it always be your proposal to be taken? Must it always be your suggestion that has to go through as a man, as a woman? You do not have all the information. You need to give it a benefit of doubt and assume that you are wrong, especially when you are at the height of all those emotions. Benefit of doubt. Tame your ego and truly listen to your spouse so that you try to understand, not trying to always convince him or convince her. Number three is the victory lenses, the lenses of victory. Whenever you can't agree, whenever you disagree, your goal should not be to win the argument, but to win your spouse. You want to have victory, but victory over what? Victory in what? Victory from which angle? You better look for victory in a sense of winning your spouse, not winning the argument. Because you see, many people are losing their marriages simply because they have invested all their energies into winning arguments. What we often forget is that if you win the argument, you have actually lost your spouse. You would rather win your spouse and lose the argument than win the argument and lose the spouse. Say that with me. I would rather win my spouse and lose the argument than winning the argument and I lose my spouse. The victory lenses. What kind of victory am I looking for? When we can't agree, must you be the winner always in every conversation? Is this disagreement worth your relationship? It's important that we learn to treasure our relationship with our spouse more than we treasure the matter at hand. Unless it is a matter of life and death, that the house is on fire, and the husband says, let us get water and pour onto it, and the wife says, no, let us wait until our neighbors come. Then that's a matter of life and death. But are we always really dealing with matters of life and death when we disagree? I don't think so. The lenses of victory. Win your spouse, not the argument. If you must win the argument, you may lose your spouse. I don't think that is worth it. So one implication of this is that sometimes you need to say, okay, all right, fine. That's okay. Let's go with your idea. Not because you are really convinced about the viability of this idea, not because you are convinced about the plausibility of this idea, not because you are convinced about the feasibility of this opinion, but just because you are convinced of the importance of your relationship with your wife or your husband. You let go and move together forward. Lens number 4 is the team lenses, the lenses of teamwork. Amidst the disagreement, you need to remember that you are one team. I remember one time when I got into a terrible disagreement with my wife. I think it was in the first or the second year of our marriage. Something had happened without having to delve into the details. But anyway, we had hosted a marriage fellowship in our own home, and then she said something that left me feeling wounded. And so we spent 2 days without talking. Of course, I know some people are saying only 2. For us, we have spent 2 months. I am praying for you. That is too much. But I remember on the 3rd day when I came from work, I reached home. And when I reached at home, I entered the house, I entered the sitting room. She was in the bedroom. And I went there and said, good evening, how are you? There was tension in the house. The emotions were high. There was anxiety. And then she stood up and she was going to bypass me after saying, I'm fine, the evening is okay, but also I could feel the air is tense. So when she was going to bypass, I stood in front of her, I held her shoulders, I looked into her eyes and I said, darling, we are one. What are we doing? She burst into laughter, I burst into laughter, and that's how we solved our problem that evening. The team lenses, when you can't agree, can you remember that you're still on the same team? You don't have the leader of opposition in a marriage. No, you are all on the proposer side. There is nobody on the opposer side. You are still on the same team. So don't let disagreements put you on 2 opposing teams or 2 opposing sides. Remember, this is not a boxing match. No, it's just a disagreement in a good relationship of a husband and a wife. You are not in a ring. The husband is not in the blue corner while the wife is in the red corner. And who is the umpire when that happens? Most likely, the devil is your umpire. Whenever you find yourself being in the blue corner and your spouse is in the red corner and you are flexing muscles. You are on the same team. Even if you disagree, you are still on the same team. You are collaborators, you are not competitors. You complement one another. You complement one another. You don't compete with one another. Lens number 5 is the perspective lens. The lenses of perspective. Whenever you can't agree, have a long-term perspective to the discussion you are having. Have a long-term view of your conversation. A long-term view of your disagreement. For example, ask yourself, will this matter in the next 1 week? We are here having fire coming through our ears. We are fuming over this issue. But will this issue really matter in 1 year? Will this still be a huge issue in 2 years to come? Will this matter, really matter, in 5 years to come? If your answer is yes, then maybe push further. But if your answer is no or somehow yes, somehow no, then maybe it's important that you put this issue in a proper perspective and not make a fuss out of it. Treasure your relationship much more than you are treasuring this issue that won't matter in the next 1 hour. You find you are disagreeing on the color of the chairs that you are going to buy. You are already maybe in a furniture workshop and he says, no, we take this blue one. No, we are taking the pink. Are you sure the color of your chairs will really matter in 3 years to come? Should it be the reason why you should feel this mental strain and emotional turbulence? Really? The lenses of perspective is what I'm talking about. Are you disagreeing about the trivial many, or you are disagreeing on the significant few? We tend to really sweat plasma and platelets over little nothings. We shouldn't sweat the little stuff. Second last is the process lenses, the lens of process. And what this is about is that sometimes you just need to allow your spouse, your wife, your husband to process this situation, to process your point of view. Because many times, by the time we come to share with our wives or with our husbands our issues and opinions and views, we have already processed them in our minds, in our hearts. So we bring them on table and you expect your wife to immediately understand what you are talking about. Yet you have thought about it for the last 2 months silently. You expect your wife to immediately buy into your opinion that you have been fomenting in your medulla oblongata over the last 1 month. You expect her to immediately buy into it without thinking about it. If you are going to, deal with the disagreement, sometimes you need to look through the lenses of process. It takes a process to process your disagreement. You need to give your wife or your husband an opportunity to process what you are talking about and what you are going through. And sometimes that could take an hour. Sometimes it could take a week. Sometimes it could take 3 months. Sometimes it could take 1 year. Sometimes it even takes 7 years, depending on the magnitude of the issue you are dealing with. So look through the lenses of process if you are going to deal with the disagreement that you have. And lastly is the third party lenses. I'm telling you, there are moments when you definitely will not agree at all until you involve a third party, another person that you are comfortable with, both of you are comfortable with. Especially if the issue you are dealing with is very delicate, if the issue you are dealing with is very important. At times, this disagreement could be rooted in some unspoken needs that are not met. And your husband may not be willing and able to tell you those issues. Your wife may not be able and willing to open up to you. Maybe the last time she opened up to you, you bashed her. Maybe the last time he opened up to you, you downplayed his issue. So now he can't open up to you. She can't open up to you. But maybe she can open up to a third party that is mutually agreeable. So when the worst gets to the worst, involve a third party. Third party can help to discern some of the issues that each one of you is not seeing. And even then, when you go to the third party, please go there as a team. Don't go there as opposers against each other. You're still going there as a team, maybe to a counselor, maybe a therapist. You are going there as a team to find solutions for your marriage. Go there to seek counsel. Don't go there to influence the third party's opinion or to accuse one another. So, ladies and gentlemen, my beloved friends, here is the summary. Whenever you can't agree, number one, wait for a moment. Buy some time. Whenever you can't agree, number two, give yourself a benefit of doubt that you could be wrong, because sometimes you actually are right about you being wrong. Number three, whenever you can't agree, look through the lenses of victory. You want to win your wife. You want to win your husband, not the argument. Because many times, when you win the argument, you lose your spouse. But when you win your spouse, even if you lose the argument, you have together won. Number 4, whenever you can't agree, remember that still you are one team. You are not opposers and proposers. You don't have a leader of opposition, still you are on one team. Find a way to deal with it. But also, number 5, whenever you can't agree, think about perspective. Put it into perspective. Will this matter in the next 1 year? Will this matter in 2 months' time? Put it into perspective. Maybe you are fighting about something so tiny. And second last, number 6 is the process. Whenever you can't agree, a number of times you need to let the process take root as your spouse is also processing what you're talking about while you also process what they are talking about. And lastly, whenever you can't agree, think of a third party. When the worst comes to the worst, think of a third party that can help. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we need to see our marriage as a place where we can bloom, where we can blossom, where our ambitions can germinate, where our visions can be harmonized together and we move together. So let us choose to flourish. Let us choose to blossom. Let us build an admirable marriage that each one of us can enjoy, both husband and wife. Let us fertilize our marriage. Let us do cross-pollination of our ideas that often cause disagreements. And for this to happen, learn to deal with disagreements in an amicable manner that we have dealt with. And in all this, remember these truths. Remember that peace can't be kept by force. Remember that your spouse's point of view is also valid. And also remember that you won't work together in life unless you are able to agree. This has been the Inspired Family Leader Program with your host, Samuel A. Bakutana. And we've been talking about when couples can't agree. I believe that your life will never be the same after today. I believe that your marriage will never be the same after today. I believe that your children are going to grow up in a nurturing environment because their dad and mom are able to solve their issues amicably without causing a fracas. Until next time, live exemplarily, love authentically, and lead relationally. Good night.